Somewhere in a lab in Beijing, a team of physicists built a refrigerator with no compressor. Almost no moving parts, no gas hissing through coils behind the back panel, just metal, a magnet, and a cooling effect that most engineers had quietly written off as a dead end. Now look around the room you're in, the fridge in your kitchen, the air conditioner in your window, the freezer at your grocery store, the cooling unit in your car, the machine keeping vaccines cold at your pharmacy. Every single one of them runs on the exact same basic idea. And that idea is almost 200 years old. For a century, nobody could really improve on it. The West mostly stopped trying to replace it and just kept making it a little cheaper and a little quieter. Then a Chinese lab quietly cracked the one problem that had kept the alternative stuck in a drawer for 50 years. Here's what that 200-year-old idea actually is. Your fridge cools by squeezing a gas, letting it expand, and dumping the heat outside through the coils on the back. It's called vapor compression, and it was invented all the way back in the 1800s. According to the Rocky Mountain Institute, it has dominated cooling for nearly a century, and it has barely changed the whole time. The compressor in your fridge today is the same concept your great-grandparents relied on, and honestly, that's a big part of why it won. The compressor is cheap, it's mature, and factories have spent decades making billions of them. Nobody had a strong reason to gamble on something new, so the whole industry just kept polishing the same machine. The real problem is the gas itself. The most common refrigerant in the world right now is called R134a. The Rocky Mountain Institute puts its global warming potential at around 1,430 times that of carbon dioxide. That's what's sealed inside hundreds of millions of fridges and air conditioners. And every time one of them leaks or gets scrapped in a junkyard, that's what escapes into the air. Every cooling machine you own is basically a small tank of a very potent greenhouse gas, kept in check only by a seal that won't last forever. And regulators around the world have started forcing these gases out, one type after another, which means the entire industry is quietly scrambling for a replacement it doesn't actually have yet. So there's a real reason to want a way to cool things without the gas. And it turns out there has always been one. This is where it gets interesting because scientists have known about it since 1881. It's called the Magnetocaloric effect. Certain metals actually heat up when you put them inside a magnetic field, and they cool back down when you take the field away. No gas, no compressor, just a magnet moving in and out. Think of it like wringing out a wet towel. Apply the magnetic field, and the material's heat gets squeezed out of it. Release the field, and the metal drops cold enough to pull heat from whatever is sitting right next to it. Do that over and over, fast enough, and you've got a fridge with almost nothing moving inside it. No hiss, no gas. Far fewer parts to break. And you don't stop at one swing. You run the material through the cycle again and again, each pass stacking a little more cold on top of the last, until you've built a temperature gap big enough to actually chill food or a room. That repeating trick is called a regenerator, and it's the heart of every serious attempt at this. And people actually built these. In 1976, a scientist named G.V. Brown made the first magnetic refrigerator that worked at room temperature using a soft, silvery metal called gadolinium. It ran. It cooled. It proved the whole thing was possible outside of a physics equation. And then it sat at the prototype stage for decades, going almost nowhere. So why isn't this already humming away in your kitchen? Why did the cleaner idea lose to a 200-year-old gas machine for 50 straight years? It comes down to one stubborn thing. Heat transfer. Specifically, how you get the heat in and out of that magnetic metal fast enough to be useful. Because every design needed a fluid to do that job. Usually water, pumped back and forth across the material to carry the heat away between each swing of the magnet. And water is slow. It bottlenecked the entire cycle. You could only run the magnet in and out so many times per second before the fluid simply couldn't keep up with it. That speed limit is what capped the cooling power, because in this kind of fridge, speed is power. The faster you can run the cycle, the more heat you can move. The fluid put a hard ceiling on both. That's the wall that kept magnetic refrigeration trapped on the lab bench for half a century. Always a promising demo, never a product. If a channel that actually explains how this stuff works, instead of just shouting that everything is the future, is what you're here for, go ahead and subscribe. Every video, I take one ordinary thing sitting in your house and show you who is really building the next version of it. Now, the part that finally changes the story. In May 2024, a team at the Chinese Academy of Sciences, made up of Yuan Lin, Jing Wang, and Baogan Shen, published a design in the journal The Innovation that got rid of the fluid completely. Their hybrid regenerator moves heat directly from solid to solid, metal touching metal, with no water pumped in between. And when you remove the fluid, you remove the exact speed limit that had capped these systems since the 1970s. The frequency ceiling that stopped every earlier design just disappears. Then they pushed it one step further. In a follow-up study published in PNAS, the same group showed that this solid-to-solid heat transfer can be aimed at precise points, not just cooling a whole box evenly, but pulling heat out of one exact spot right where you want it, on demand. And that last detail is the real story here, because it's tempting to picture this as the fridge that finally kills the compressor. It isn't. Not yet, anyway. The researchers themselves describe it as a conceptual device, a lab prototype. There's no factory, no ship date, no price tag sitting on a shelf. The gadolinium alloys and the strong magnets it needs cost more than a standard refrigerant system does today, and solid-state cooling often runs less efficiently than a plain old compressor right now. If you were hoping to buy one next year, you'll be waiting a lot longer than that, so the fridge in your kitchen is safe for a while. But think about where precise, gas-free, targeted cooling actually matters most. A computer chip cooking itself under its own heat, throttling because it can't shed warmth fast enough. An electric vehicle battery pack that degrades a little every single time it runs hot. A data center burning through enormous amounts of power just to keep thousands of servers cold at a moment when the whole world is racing to build more of them for artificial intelligence. In all three of those places, heat is the ceiling on what the technology can do. Get rid of that heat efficiently, and you get chips that run faster and batteries that hold up longer. That is exactly where a cooler with no compressor, no gas, and the ability to hit one precise spot could rewrite the rules. And it's the reason this quiet little paper matters far more than a new kitchen appliance ever would. Which brings us back to the thing that should worry the companies still selling you the same gas and compressor box your grandparents owned. The magnetocaloric effect sat out in the open for more than 100 years. Everyone knew the physics. The bottleneck was public knowledge, printed in journals anyone could read. And the group that finally engineered its way past it wasn't in Germany or Japan or a lab in the United States, it was in Beijing. While the big appliance brands sitting in your kitchen kept refining a machine designed in the 1800s, someone on the other side of the world quietly rebuilt the whole idea from the ground up, starting from the physics and working forward. And by the time a version of this reaches a real factory floor, your next cooling machine might not need a compressor or a single drop of refrigerant gas at all. Every appliance giant in the world had the same physics on their desk, and none of them moved on it. A single lab in Beijing is simply the first one to actually crack it, and the companies in your kitchen never saw it coming.